Can a simple wooden handle be turned into a homemade soldering device? Today, I'll use this wooden handle along with a few simple materials to build a compact DIY soldering machine. Let's see how it turns out. First, I use a marker to make 2 points on the surface of the wooden handle to mark the drilling locations. Next, I place the wooden handle in a vise and tighten it securely to keep it stable during fabrication. Then I use a drill to make 2 holes at the marked positions. Next, I insert 2 metal rivets into these holes to create the contact points for the heating section of the soldering device. I use a wooden hammer to tap them gently and secure them firmly. After that, I use pliers to trim the excess length of the rivets so they fit better during the next assembly steps. Next, I loosen the vise and adjust the wooden handle so it lies horizontally for the next fabrication step. I use a ruler to draw a straight line along the center of the wooden handle. Then, I use a cutting tool to create a shallow groove along the marked line. This groove provides a recessed path for the electrical wire, helping keep the wire neatly inside the handle and preventing it from shifting or interfering with other components during assembly. Next, I prepare a long piece of electrical wire to serve as the lead for the soldering device. First, I strip the insulation from the end of the wire to expose the copper conductor inside. Then, I divide the copper strands into 2 separate groups to make the connections easier. I wrap one end of the electrical wire and secure it to one of the metal rivets on the wooden handle, creating a connection point for the system. Next, I prepare another piece of blue electrical wire and repeat the same process, securing its end to the remaining metal rivet on the wooden handle. This video is for DIY and educational purposes only. Projects involving soldering, heat, and electricity can be potentially dangerous. Always use appropriate protective equipment and follow proper safety procedures when working. Then, I gather the 2 wires and place them neatly inside the groove along the wooden handle. I use electrical tape to secure the wires along the groove and prevent them from shifting during use. I repeat the same process at both ends of the wooden handle, so the wiring stays firmly in place. In the next step, I use 2 metal cores as intermediate connectors between the heating section and the soldering tips. I attach the 2 metal cores to the 2 metal rivets on the wooden handle, then tighten the nuts to create secure connection points. For the remaining end of the soldering device's wire, I strip the insulation to expose the copper conductor inside. Then, I attach an alligator clip to the end of the wire and secure it. The alligator clip provides a convenient connection point for the power source and makes the wire easier to connect and disconnect during testing. Every like and subscription motivates me to create more creative DIY projects. Thank you so much for your support. Next, I use a piece of copper rod to make the soldering tip. First, I cut a short section of copper to a suitable size. Then I attach it to a drill and spin the drill to grind and shape the tip. The grinding process helps reduce the size of the copper tip, forming a smaller and sharper contact point, allowing heat to be more concentrated at the heating area and making the soldering process easier and more precise. Once the desired shape is achieved, I attach the homemade soldering tip to the heating section of the device and secure it firmly. Finally, I make and install another identical soldering tip on the opposite side, creating a device with two soldering tips. During testing, make sure the device is disconnected from the power source before adjusting any connections, and avoid touching components that may become hot. Next, I bend the two soldering tips slightly toward each other so that the distance between them is more suitable, making it easier to work on small metal parts. Here, I prepare a battery as the power source for the soldering device. Then, I connect the electrical clamp from the device to the battery terminal and check the connections before testing. For the first test, I use two razor blades. I place the two metal pieces together, then bring the two soldering tips into contact with the area to be joined and hold them steadily for a short time. As the metal heats up, the contact area becomes hot and forms a connection between the two metal pieces. After completing the process, I gently check the joint and find that the two razor blades are held together. For the next test, I try joining a small metal piece to the terminal of a battery. So, the homemade two-tip soldering machine is complete and has passed its initial tests. Using a few simple materials, I was able to create a pretty interesting DIY device. See you in the next project.